after I, got into real estate and I traveled the world, I ended up buying the franchising rights for Remax for the state of Indiana. And I was 26 years old.
Wow.
And I bought the franchising rights for Indiana, moved to Indiana.
Wow.
And I remember being interviewed for the Indianapolis Business Journal. And the guy said, "What are your goals here in Indiana?" And I said, "We'll do $1 billion in sales in Indiana." And the gentleman said to me, says, "Are you certain of that?" I said, "Well, that's my goal." He says, "Well, the two largest companies that have been here for 100 years don't do $100 million, or $1 billion combined." And my cocky young self, I said,
Well,
"We'll be
they're
the
not me."
first."
Yeah,
He's
they're
like,
not
"What?"
me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just 3 weeks later, the Indianapolis Business Journal, and I have it at home. It says sets $1 billion goal.
Wow.
May 1992, we hit $1 billion in sales. 5 years later.
Wow.
Let's say you've been earning a certain amount of income for the last, 10 years, and you want to maybe double or triple your income. Isn't it worth it to be disciplined to sustainable change versus, rapid change that goes away? If we are creatures of habit, then why not get really good at develop empowering, constructive, positive habits? Why not get good at upgrading our own mental and emotional and behavioral software so that once we do it, we can just sustain it because we set a new expectation for ourselves? There's too many people, okay, out there teaching, fast food thinking, lose all the weight in 7 days. Well, you're going to gain it all back because most of the weight you lose is water. Right? Let's see how much money I can make this weekend. Well, that's great, but you're not going to sustain it because the habit is not there. This is why people who win the lottery lose it within 3 years, and people who lose money that they've made it gain it back within 3 years because they have the neural pattern of the behavior, of the emotions, of the strategies. That makes sense, right? Perfect practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. If you practice the wrong things, you make the wrong things and patterns permanent. Does that make sense? So let's get rid of practice makes perfect. No, perfect practice makes perfect. 7 days of gratitude exercise. The more you focus on your thoughts, the more your brain becomes habituated to it. The brain tends to pay more attention to negative thoughts. This is based on the instinctual parts of the brain. We can train ourselves to focus on the positives as well. At the end of the day, he says, write down 3 things you feel grateful for and 3 things you did well. This can change your brain. You only have to do it for 7 days and you will see your self-esteem grow for 3 months. So when we are giving you, gratitude things to do, anything we're teaching you to do, it's all based in neuroscience research. And so the more you're grateful, the more you have to be grateful for. The more you train your brain to be grateful, the more it looks and becomes habituated to look for other things to be grateful for. Here is one thing that you can do. You write out, okay, on a sheet of paper on your computer, all right, I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I am now earning. I'm so happy and grateful for the fact that I am now earning, and put a number there. I'm now earning whatever. Let's say you're making $10,000, whether it's a day, a week, or a month. I'm now earning $20,000, okay? I'm now earning. And then in the very next step, you started to see yourself earning that amount of money. You started to see yourself and how you felt, just how many people you would impact. You started to see yourself as you upgraded your knowledge and your skills and you developed, and you started to feel proud and you started to feel in alignment with making that amount of money. Okay, so you started to visualize. Why? Because visualization is simulation, and you start to fire off the neurons in your brain, right? You start to fire off the neurons in your brain. The neurons that fire together will wire together. That's part 1. He says, don't analyze every piece of the puzzle. Don't become paralyzed because of analysis. Paralysis by analysis. Don't analyze all the pieces of the puzzle. Let's go to another one of our brain experts, Dr. Shelley Carson from Harvard. And she is an expert in creativity. How many of you are pretty creative? Have you ever considered that creativity is a neuro muscle that you can utilize? Shelley Carson says, good creative ideas are a function of how many ideas you come up with. She says, try this. Choose a problem that you have, such as being in debt. Now look at that with curiosity. She says, a lot of people focus on debt and they go, oh my God, look at the debt I'm in. How am I going to get out? Here's the problem. I can't pay this. I can't do this. She goes, now when you sit down and you look at the debt and you write down, you brainstorm how to get out of debt and make more wealth and write down every idea that you can come up with, she goes, you activate the creativity neuro muscle. And the more you practice it, the more you teach yourself how to focus on the solution instead of the problem, the more you're flipping your neuroplasticity switch, but the more you're flipping on your curiosity, imagination, and creativity circuits.
We were stuck, but it wasn't because we didn't try hard, because people started hitting the upper limits of their financial blueprint, the upper limits of their beliefs, the upper limits of their habitual ways of doing things. So regardless of how much more information we gave them, they just were at their limits.
Believe they can make more.
That's right. Well, and again, when we talk about beliefs, there's two types of beliefs. There's belief that I say to you, sure, I could do that. Oh, yeah, man, I want to do that. But if there's an opposing belief at the implicit part of the brain saying, but you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not worthy enough, you're afraid of failure, you're afraid of this, you're afraid of that, you won't do it because the non-conscious controls the entire game. And so we started to retrain our agents. 75 agents paid, I think it was $2,000 or $3,000 to go through a 6-month brain retraining program. Huh. Those 75 agents increased our sales by $100 million.
Wow.
And we said, okay, we're going to teach this to the entire company.
Yeah.
So we went from $1.2 billion to $4.5 billion in sales a year in 3 years by working on this versus what they needed to do.
When you set a goal, like you just said, I'm so happy now earning $2 trillion company. When you set that goal and you haven't built $1 million company, your brain deletes it because it activates the uncertainty and fear centers. So set a goal that's just outside of your comfort zone, all right? Just outside of your comfort zone that scares you a little bit, but also encourages you and inspires you. Then, what would you need to believe? What would you need to believe, all right, in order to earn twice as much money? What would you need to believe about yourself, right? What would you need to think? And then, what would you need to do that day, right? That week, that month? Are there people in your industry, job or career or business that are earning twice as much as you are? The answer is, of course there are. So why not you, right? So we have to understand that our beliefs drive our behavior. Our habits drive our behavior. This is huge, okay? Don't try to be perfect. Focus on the 1 or 2 things that you have to get right. Don't try to be perfect. Focus on the 1 or 2 things, okay, that you have to get right, and then do those. Dr. Jeff Spencer, so here's what he says. The champion mindset. He works with Olympic athletes to help them level up their game and CEOs. So he says to develop your championship mindset, he says, make decisions based on what you stand to gain, not based on what you might lose. This is huge. This is using the left prefrontal cortex right versus the right prefrontal cortex. So he said, make decisions based on what you stand to gain versus what you may lose. Championship mindset is you have to imagine the future. Here we go, imagination again. When you activate the occipital lobe in the back of the brain, the imagination centers, the visual cortex centers, you start to activate the nucleus accumbens, the insula, the motivational centers of your brain, which then activates the genius part of your brain. Think of your brain as circuits that are lighting up or turning off. positive, negative, empowering, disempowering, constructive, destructive, inspiring, expiring. You own a brain. So when you imagine the future better than it is today, you're activating the right neural circuitry and the neurochemistry that goes with taking action and achieving more of your goals. Feel. Get your emotions behind your goal. She says, when you get your emotions behind your goal, by thinking about all the benefit of everything you're going to gain, who you're going to become, who you're going to be able to help, how you're growing, when you get the emotion behind it, and the emotion is the energy put into motion that is required to get the momentum and keep the momentum going. It's just awareness. Once you are aware, then you can make a decision, a choice to change. So if you're aware of your limiting beliefs, write them down. If you're aware of your empowering beliefs, write them down. If you're aware of your disempowering emotions around money, write them down. Be aware of the choices that you make. In your tipping, in the food choices you make when you're in a restaurant, in the clothes that you buy, just awareness. And I want you to do this. Start off your new money story like this. I'm so grateful and happy for the fact that I am now, and fill in the blanks, feeling, doing, experiencing, having, giving. Just write out a little story of your money story. And then what I want you to do every day for the next just 7 days, for 5 minutes, I want you to read that new money story, even though it's not real right now. And then I want you just to imagine, what would it be like if this was real right now? What would it be like? And I want you to feel that.